warning Canada could take over the US. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen, having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign. Last several months. It's not for sale, won't be for sale. The global balance of power is shifting, and few saw it coming in less than a year. Canada, the quiet neighbor the world thought it knew, has flipped the script. The numbers don't lie. American consumers are facing the biggest price spikes in decades, while companies like Walmart, Ford, and General Motors scramble to rethink their strategies. But across the border, Canada is winning, and winning big billions in fresh investments. A wave of high-tech jobs, critical minerals, and electric vehicle supply chains now run through Ottawa, not Washington. The result, Canada isn't just keeping up for the first time in modern memory, it's starting to pull ahead quietly, taking control of the supply chains that power the future. So here's the big question. What's behind Canada's sudden rise to the top of the global trade game, and how will Donald Trump and the US fight back before it's too late? Stay with us as we break down the biggest trade story of the year, because what happens next could shake the entire world economy in 2025. While headlines screamed about tariffs and tech wars, Canada made a quieter move, one that could reshape the global trade game beneath the snowy ridges of Yukon and the industrial belts of Ontario and Quebec. A strategic bet was already paying off. Canada wasn't just digging minerals out of the ground, it was building power. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earths. These aren't just buzzwords. They are the lifeblood of electric vehicles, smartphones, and next-G military systems, and Canada. It's sitting on a gold mine. Canada still ranks among the top nickel producers with over 132,000 metric tons. In 2023, output dipped a bit last year due to cutbacks at Glenna's Raglan and Sudbury mines, but Canada's role in the global battery supply chain remains critical. Ontario led the country in nickel production in late 2024. The Canadian government took a key step by pledging $1 for rare earth development in northern Quebec and Labrador. The funding supports new roads and port facilities early, but essential groundwork for Canada's push into global mineral supply chains. These aren't just mines, they're full-spectrum facilities designed to extract, refine, and ship high-grade materials directly to global markets. And here's the kicker. The US battery industry can't go it alone under the Inflation Reduction Act. EV makers must source critical minerals from free trade partners like Canada to qualify for federal tax credits that's made Canadian suppliers essential to keeping the US battery boom alive. That gives Ottawa not just leverage but veto power over critical supply chains that Washington once assumed it controlled while Trump was ramping up tariffs. Canada was building the choke points in a trade war driven by control. Whoever owns the bottleneck writes the rules, and right now, Canada is tightening the valve while Washington debates tariffs and trade wars. Canada is quietly transforming into North America's electric vehicle EV powerhouse. Back in 2023, Canada and Ontario pledged up to 15 billion Canadian dollars to help Stellantis and LG build a massive EV battery plant in Windsor. This substantial investment underscores Canada's commitment to becoming a central player in the EV supply chain. Same moment, Volkswagen locks in St. Thomas for its Gigafactory. Canada steps up 13 billion Canadian dollars in tax credits, plus a 700 million Canadian grant. These initiatives are not isolated. They are part of a broader strategy to position Canada as a leader in EV production and innovation in Quebec. The provincial government is fostering the battery industry by providing substantial loans to key players. Notably, a $150 million loan was granted to Ultium Cam, a joint venture between General Motors and POSCO Future M, to establish a cathode materials production plant in Bonor. Similarly, Solutions Energetique Vololta Canada received a $150 million loan for constructing a copper foil manufacturing plant for EV batteries in Granby. These strategic investments are complemented by Canada's alignment with US policies under the Inflation Reduction Act. EVs assembled in North America, including those with components manufactured in Canada, are eligible for tax credits. Up to $7,500, this policy synergy enhances Canada's attractiveness as a hub for EV manufacturing, benefiting from both domestic support and favorable access to the US market. In essence, Canada's concerted efforts in building a robust EV supply chain, from raw materials to final assembly, are reshaping the automotive landscape in North America as the US focuses on trade disputes. Canada is capitalizing on strategic investments and policy alignments to drive its EV industry forward as US industries grapple with the repercussions of recent tariffs. An unexpected dependency has surfaced. A growing reliance on Canada retail giants like Costco have proactively rerouted supply chains to mitigate tariff impacts. In May 2025, Costco's CEO Ron Vacris said the company was shifting production of Kirkland signature items to the countries where they're sold, especially Canada. The goal: cut costs and avoid extra tariffs. This strategic shift underscores how Canadian operations are becoming integral to US businesses aiming to circumvent trade barriers. The US is doubling down on this partnership. In August 2024, the Department of Defense put $20 million into building a cobalt refinery in Ontario. That's a major move under the Defense Production Act. This move aims to secure a stable supply of cobalt essential for electric vehicle batteries and military hardware amidst China's market dominance. The Canadian government supplemented this with an additional $3.6 million, exemplifying bilateral efforts to bolster North American supply chains. Moreover, Canada's pivotal role in supplying critical minerals to the US is evident. As of January 2025, Canada provided significant percentages of US consumption for various minerals: 21% of potash, 50% of refined zinc, and 23% of nickel, among others. These resources are vital for sectors ranging from agriculture to defense, highlighting Canada's strategic importance in the US supply chain. While the US continues to navigate trade challenges and policy debates, Canada's proactive measures and resource offerings position it as an indispensable partner. This evolving dynamic underscores the complexities of modern trade relationships and the unintended consequences of protectionist policies after watching US firms lean on Canada to dodge trade headaches. Ottawa's next move is even bigger and more global. It's not just about helping the US anymore, it's about rewriting the map. Canada isn't just absorbing US supply chain overflow, it's stepping onto the world stage as an independent trade power, while Washington remains paralyzed by partisan gridlock. Canada has accelerated its diplomatic offensive. Since 2022, Ottawa has secured and expanded a string of major free trade agreements stretching across the Americas. Europe and the Indo-Pacific USMCA is still a key deal, but Canada's gone way beyond that. It's now locked into the CPTP and has trade agreements with the EU, the UK, South Korea, and ASEAN countries. Global Affairs Canada says these deals give Canadian exporters special access to over 1.5 billion people altogether. They cover about 66% of global GDP. The real turning point came in November 2022. That's when Canada dropped a $2.3 billion bombshell. The Indo-Pacific Strategy spread over 5 years. It's not just about diplomacy, it's a full-scale push into trade logistics, digital infrastructure, and boots-on-the-ground deals with India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and South Korea. This isn't window dressing, it's Canada building an economic escape hatch, one that cuts down its reliance on any Single player, including the US in March 2020, Canada's exports beyond the US spiked nearly 25% in just 1 month thanks to rising shipments to Europe and Asia. It's early proof that Ottawa's trade pivot isn't just working, it's accelerating. That's more than just spreading trade around, it's a safety net with tariffs, delays, and global tensions piling up. Canada's building a backup plan that lowers risk and locks in steady growth. The difference is clear. The US is scrambling to clean up its own tariff mess. Meanwhile, Canada's calling the shots, moving forward and showing that smart foreign policy isn't about noise, it's about results. While Washington is stuck in tariff fights and politics, Ottawa is busy doing something else, building a new trade backbone linking North America and the Pacific. Multinational corporations are taking notice. From tech to autos to agriculture. Companies are shifting operations to Canada, not for the headlines, but for stability. As geopolitical risks between the US and China escalate, Canada offers a clean alternative, lower risk, fewer surprises, direct access to Europe and Asia for global firms. It's not just smart, it's survival. The money confirms it. In 2023, Canada attracted $50.3 billion in foreign direct investment, up 9% from the year before. That made it the 6th largest FDI destination globally. That's not just passive capital, it's strategic relocation. That money is going into smart warehouses, integrated rail systems, and digital logistics networks connecting Vancouver to Rotterdam. And it's working in the fourth quarter of 2024. Canadian exports to non-US markets rose 7.4%. While growth to the US was slower, the EU saw an 11.4% jump, with the UK up over 14%. These aren't just numbers, they signal something deeper, that Canada is expanding market share in a way the US isn't right now. It's happening on the ground in Winnipeg. Centerport Canada has become the biggest trimodal inland port in North America, linking railroad and air into one powerful route from Asia to the US Midwest in the west. Nutrient just announced a major new terminal in the Pacific Northwest to boost exports of potash, a critical agricultural input, in response to growing demand from Asia. That facility, announced in May 2025, wasn't built on speculation. It's backed by real contracts, real demand, and a global market moving away from political bottlenecks. While the US scrambles to adjust to the consequences of its own tariff regime, Canada is offering something different, a neutral ground, a reliable launchpad, a way out of the chaos, and the world is responding with trade deals, with capital, and with confidence. Music. So as America questions whether its protectionist playbook still works, Ottawa is already 2 steps ahead, quietly turning itself into the new default for global commerce. The sweeping tariffs introduced in April 2025 have led to significant economic repercussions for American consumers and industries, according to a study by Yale's Budget Lab. These tariffs have resulted in an average increase of 3% in consumer prices, translating to an estimated $3,800 annual loss per household. This surge in costs is particularly burdensome for lower-income families who allocate a larger portion of their income to essential goods. The manufacturing sector, especially in states like Michigan and Ohio, has been hit hard. Notably, the Institute for Supply Management reported a contraction in manufacturing activity for the 3rd consecutive month in May, with declines in new orders, production, and employment. Michigan's auto industry has suffered significant setbacks, with companies like General Motors and Ford experiencing substantial market value losses and initiating layoffs. These developments have prompted multinational corporations to reconsider their investment strategies. Canada, with its stable trade agreements and favorable business environment, is emerging as an attractive alternative for companies seeking to mitigate geopolitical risks. This shift not only threatens the US's ES position as a manufacturing leader, but also poses long-term challenges to its economic stability as the US wrestles with global trade. One big question hangs in the air. Will it adjust course to protect its economy or double down and risk falling further behind? While the US plays loud politics with global trade, Canada is doing something very different and very effective. It's not grandstanding, it's not starting fights. It's just getting to work. Over the last 2 years, Canada has taken a quiet but strategic approach to its economic future. No high-stakes trade wars, no unpredictable tariff hikes, just steady investment in logistics, infrastructure, new technologies, and cutting back red tape. And this strategy is starting to pay off in the first quarter of 2025. Canada's GDP grew at an annualized rate of 2.2%, beating expectations. According to a May 30th report by Reuters, that growth came largely from exports and a rush of US companies buying Canadian goods to avoid future tariffs, while the US economy showed signs of slowdown. Canada quietly posted one of the strongest quarters among G7 countries. Behind the scenes, foreign capital is flowing in. In 2024, Canada's total foreign direct investment FDI rose by 5.5%, reaching over $1.5 trillion by year's end. And that money isn't just sitting in real estate, it's being funneled into trade hubs, AI labs, clean energy infrastructure, and port expansions. These are the long-term bets global investors make when they trust the system won't change overnight. Canada's labour market is keeping pace. By December 2024, the country had created 413,000 new jobs, pushing the unemployment rate down to 6.7%, its lowest in over a year. That job growth was led by sectors like green energy, digital logistics, and advanced manufacturing, precisely the areas where Canada has made quiet, focused investments. The most striking part, none of this has been done with fanfare, no fiery speeches, no global showdowns, just policy, measured, consistent, and designed to deliver over decades in a world that often rewards spectacle. Canada is reminding us that slow and steady still works, especially when paired with strategy. While others chase headlines, Canada is building foundations. The global economy is starting to notice. The question is, will it also follow? So far, Canada has played a quiet game and won, but now all eyes are on Washington. Will the United States strike back or keep stumbling through a maze of tariffs and missed opportunities? Since April 2025, the US has gone all-in on America. First again, Trump rolled out a new round of tariffs, some as high as 50% on Chinese and European goods. The stated goal: bring manufacturing jobs back home and punish unfair trade practices. The real impact: higher costs for US businesses. Retailers are feeling the squeeze, and exporters are struggling to compete in a market that's getting harder to navigate. But tariffs aren't the only card Washington can play. There's talk of renegotiating existing trade deals, especially the USMCA. Some Republican lawmakers have floated the idea of adding stricter Buy American clauses or even penalizing US companies that shift production to Canada or Mexico. Others want to use the Defense Production Act to push companies into reshoring key industries like microchips and batteries. The Biden administration already tried something similar with the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022. Trump's circle may try a more aggressive version. But at what cost? There's also pressure to outspend rivals on tech. Canada is gaining ground fast with AI, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing hubs, many backed by foreign investors who are increasingly wary of US political instability. In response, Trump allies are proposing a federal reshoring innovation fund that could subsidize US production of strategic technologies, but that fund hasn't passed yet, and time is running out. Meanwhile, the US is bleeding market share in the fourth quarter of 2024. Canada's exports to the EU and UK rose over 11%, while American exporters face rising compliance hurdles and retaliatory tariffs. Auto manufacturers in Michigan and Ohio are already warning about layoffs and plant slowdowns by March 2025. Ford was under pressure overseas, especially in Europe, where rising import costs and shifting production plans hit supply chains hard. And they didn't release exact EU sales numbers, but internal reports showed a clear drop from the year before the long-term risk. If the US keeps relying on protectionism while others build partnerships, it may end up isolating itself from the very markets that fuel its industrial strength. Trade experts warn that a tariff wall may feel like defense, but it's also a cage, and while Washington debates, Canada continues to ink deals attract capital and expand its influence far beyond North America. It doesn't need to fight, it just needs to keep offering what global companies want: predictability, infrastructure, and access to the world. That leaves a tough question for Trump and whoever sits in the Oval Office next: double down on tariffs or pivot towards smarter competition. One thing is clear: if the US doesn't adjust its strategy soon, it may wake up to find the center of North American trade has quietly moved north, and by then Canada won't just be a close partner, it'll be the one setting the rules. What if the real trade war isn't happening on the front pages, but just across the northern border, while the US stays busy fighting over tariffs, lawsuits, and policy gridlock? Canada is quietly rewriting the rules with fewer headlines and more strategy. Ottawa is turning itself into the new command center of North American trade, not by shouting louder, but by moving smarter. This isn't just a short-term shift from electric vehicles to critical minerals to global trade pacts. Canada's playbook is about resilience, not reaction. Meanwhile, America's biggest retailers are already feeling the sting: slower shipments, higher prices, and shrinking margins, all thanks to a tariff regime that was meant to protect, but may now be doing the opposite. So here's the big question: what will Trump or Washington do next? Will we see a bold counterstrike to retake the trade spotlight? Or will Canada's quiet rise continue step by step until it's too late to stop? One thing's for sure: this isn't over, not even close. What do you think America's next move should be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk.